Part 6. The Other Secret. We sat on the porch for a long time after that. The sun went down. The mosquitoes came out. Grandma lit a citronella candle, and we watched the flame flicker in the dark. I had 1,000 questions, but I only asked one. Did you love him? James, I mean. Grandma Odessa looked out at the dirt road. A pickup truck went by Mr. Abernathy, probably, heading home from the feed store. The headlights swept across the porch and were gone. I loved James the way you love a warm coat in winter, she said. He kept me safe. He kept me from being alone. He was a good man, May Francis. A good father. A good husband. He knew about Caleb, told him everything before we married, and he never held it against me. Never threw it in my face. Never made me feel ashamed. She turned to look at me. Her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying. Odessa Petway didn't cry in front of people. But Caleb, she said. Caleb was the fire. I thought that was the secret. I thought the letters, the twin brothers, the love triangle, that was what my grandmother had been hiding. I was wrong. There was another secret. A bigger one. And I didn't find it until the day before I left. It was the last week of August. School started in 2 weeks. My mother had called and said it was time to come home. Grandma and I were cleaning out the pantry, really cleaning, not just moving things around. Throwing away old jars with mold on top, sweeping out the cobwebs, taking stock of what we had for the winter. I was on my knees, reaching into the back corner, when my hand touched something that wasn't a jar or a sack or a box. It was a photograph. A loose photograph, stuck between the wall and a crate of sweet potatoes. I pulled it out and turned it over. And my heart stopped. It was my grandmother. Young, maybe 20, maybe 21. Wearing a white dress. Holding a baby. A newborn, wrapped in a white blanket, with a tiny face and dark eyes and a little tuft of hair. On the back, in my grandmother's handwriting, were 7 words. Caleb Jr., born June 1960. Given away. I stared at it. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Grandma, I said. She was standing in the kitchen doorway, a jar of pickled okra in her hand. She looked at the photograph in my hand. She looked at my face. And she set the jar down very carefully, like it was made of glass, and so was she. I was going to tell you, she said. Before you left. I was working up to it. Who is this baby? She came into the pantry, sat down on the floor next to me, which was hard for her because her knees were bad. She took the photograph from my hand and held it like it was made of gold. Your uncle, she said. Your mother's half-brother. Quel besson. Mine and Caleb's son. I did the math. June 1960. Caleb left in 1961. That meant. You were pregnant when he left? I was pregnant before he left. He didn't know. I didn't tell him until after the baby was born. And then I made a decision that I have regretted every single day of my life. She touched the baby's face in the photograph. His tiny, sleeping face. I couldn't keep him, May Francis. I was living in James's house, taking care of James's children. I wasn't married to James yet, that came later. But I was already acting as their mother. And here I was, pregnant with another man's baby. In Gee's Bend, Alabama, in 1960. You understand what that would have meant? I didn't. Not really. I was 12. But I understood enough. They would have called me names, she said. They would have called the baby names. James might have still taken me, and he was a good man. But it would have been hard. So hard. And I was scared. I was so scared. She took a breath. A woman from Montgomery came through. A midwife. She knew a family, good people, church people, couldn't have children of their own. They were looking for a baby to raise. I gave him to her. I never saw him again. You never tried to find him? I tried. I wrote letters. I made phone calls. But the family moved and the midwife died, and the trail went cold. I told myself he was better off. I told myself he had a good life. I told myself I did the right thing. She looked at me. For the first time in my life, I saw my grandmother cry. But I never stopped looking. And I never stopped hoping that someday, somebody would find him for me. Part 7, The Promise. I left the next day. The Greyhound bus was late, as usual. Grandma and I stood on the porch, not saying much. She handed me a paper bag with a sandwich and an apple and a piece of her sweet potato pie. Don't open it until you're grown, she said. I thought she meant the pie. She meant the envelope she had slipped into the bag while I wasn't looking. I promise, I said. She hugged me, held on longer than usual. When she pulled back, her eyes were dry, but her hands were shaking. You're my heart, May Frances, she said. Don't you ever forget that. I didn't forget. I carried it with me all the way to Montgomery, all the way to Nashville, all the way to Chicago. I carried it through high school and college and my first job and my wedding day. I carried it through the birth of my own children and the death of my mother, and the phone call that came in 1975, telling me that Odessa Petway had passed away in her sleep. I came back for the funeral, stood at the gravesite under the pecan tree, and watched them lower her into the red dirt. Listened to the preacher say her name. Watched my mother weep. And that night, in my grandmother's empty bedroom, I opened the envelope. Inside was the photograph. The baby, Caleb Jr. And on the back, in her shaky old handwriting, were the words she'd written years ago and never told a soul. Caleb Jr., born June 1960. Given to a family in Montgomery who could keep him safe. His name now is Samuel. He is your uncle. Find him. Part 8, The Finding. It took me 3 months. I started with the midwife's name, the only name my grandmother had left behind. I found her obituary in the Montgomery Advertiser. She had died in 1968. But her daughter was still alive, living in the same house on Union Street. I went to see her. A small woman with cataract-clouded eyes and a memory like a steel trap. Odessa Petway's baby, she said, rocking in her chair. Yes, I remember. My mama always said that was the hardest one. The saddest one. She cried for a week after she gave that baby away. Do you know where he went? She was quiet for a minute. Then she reached into a drawer beside her chair and pulled out a worn address book. Flipped through it with fingers that trembled. Turner, she said. Samuel Turner. The family was named Turner. They lived on Dexter Avenue. Mr. Turner was a barber. I drove to Dexter Avenue. Found the barbershop. It was a small storefront with a striped pole and a sign that said Turner's Barbershop, established 1965. I went inside. A man was sweeping the floor. He was maybe 35 years old, tall, broad-shouldered, with a kind face and eyes that looked familiar. Eyes I'd seen before. In a photograph. In my grandmother's face. Can I help you? He said. I held out the photograph. The one of my grandmother holding a baby. The one with the writing on the back. This is you, I said. You're Caleb Petway Jr., you're my uncle. My grandmother was Odessa Petway. She never stopped looking for you. He took the photograph, looked at it, looked at me, and then he sat down in his own barber chair and cried for 20 minutes. Part 9: The Reunion. We talked for 3 hours that day. He told me about his life adopted by the Turners, raised on Dexter Avenue, always knowing he was adopted but never knowing the details. His parents had died when he was in college. He'd tried to find his birth mother once, but the records were sealed, and he'd given up. I always wondered, he said. But I told myself it didn't matter. I had a good life. I had parents who loved me. I didn't need to know. Didn't you want to know? He looked at the photograph again, traced his finger over my grandmother's face. Every single day, he said. Every single day of my life. I told him about Odessa, about the letters, about Caleb, about James, about the summer of 1965 and the pantry and the secrets she kept for 30 years. She was ashamed, I said. Not of you, of what she did. She thought you were better off without her. He shook his head. Slow. She should have kept me, he said. But he wasn't angry. He was sad. The kind of sad that comes from a lifetime of almost knowing. She knew that, I said. She regretted it every day. She told me. He was quiet for a long time. Then he stood up and walked to the back of the barbershop. There was a small office there, with a desk and a filing cabinet and a photograph on the wall. The photograph showed a woman, older now, gray-haired, smiling, standing in front of a shotgun house with a porch that wrapped around the front. Where did you get that? I whispered. The adoption agency gave it to my parents, he said. A photograph of my birth mother, so I would know what she looked like. I've had it my whole life. He looked at me, smiled. It was like seeing a ghost and a welcome all at once. She was beautiful, he said. She was, I said. And she loved you. She never stopped. Part 10: The Growing. That was 30 years ago. Samuel and I have had Thanksgiving dinner together every year since. His children call me Cousin May. My children call him Uncle Sam. We've watched each other's babies grow up and graduate and get married and have babies of their own. My mother, his half-sister, lived long enough to meet him. She cried for a week when I told her the story. Not because she was angry at Odessa. Because she understood. Because she remembered her mother's face when she thought nobody was looking. Because she knew, in a way that only a daughter can know, that her mother had been carrying a weight too heavy for one person to bear. She did the best she could. My mother said, "That's all any of us can do." Underscore 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 underscore. Part 11. The Truth About Secrets. I'm 72 years old now. I've lived long enough to keep a few secrets of my own. Long enough to understand that my grandmother wasn't trying to deceive anybody. She was trying to survive. The world she lived in, the Deep South in the middle of the 20th century, was not kind to women who made choices outside the lines. It was not kind to black women at all. She did what she had to do to keep herself safe, to keep her family together, to keep a roof over her head and food on the table. And yes, she kept secrets. But she also kept letters. She kept photographs. She kept a box in the pantry, behind the flour sacks, waiting for somebody brave enough to open it. She kept the truth. She just buried it deep enough that it wouldn't hurt anybody until they were ready to hear it. Some secrets are like that. Some secrets aren't meant to stay buried forever. They're planted, like seeds. They wait in the dark until the ground is soft and the rain comes and the sun is warm enough to help them grow. And when they finally break through the soil, they don't destroy what was there before. They add to it. They make it stronger. They turn a story about loss into a story about finding. My grandmother's secret gave me an uncle. It gave my children cousins. It gave all of us a bigger family than we knew we had. That's the thing about secrets, May Francis. Some of them are gifts. You just have to live long enough to unwrap them. Underscore 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 underscore. Epilogue. The Pecan Tree. I went back to G's Bend last spring. The shotgun house is still there, though nobody's lived in it for years. The roof is sagging. The porch needs new boards. The pecan tree in the backyard is taller than I remembered. I walked out to the spot where my grandmother buried the letters. I didn't dig them up. I didn't need to. I already knew what they said. But I stood there for a while. In the red dirt, under the blue sky, listening to the locusts sing. And I swear to you, I swear on my grandmother's grave I felt her there. In the warm breeze, in the smell of honeysuckle, in the quiet patience of a woman who knew that some truths take a lifetime to tell. I sat down under the pecan tree. I leaned my back against the trunk, and I talked to her. I found him, Grandma, I said. He's good. He's happy. He has a family who loves him. And he forgives you. He understood. The wind blew through the leaves. A blue jay landed on a branch, looked at me, flew away. I like to think that was her answer.